Welcome to my review of the BFG, directed by Steven Spielberg, a fantasy children's film adapted from a Roald Dahl book of the same name that centers on a young girl, Sophie, who gets whisked away from her England orphanage by a friendly giant who takes her to an unknown place in the world where human-eating giants run free. So the BFG is directed by the one and the only Steven Spielberg and was adapted by Melissa Matheson, the late Melissa Matheson, who was the writer for E.T. And the BFG did come out last week. It ranked number 4 at the box office and only made like $18 million on a $140 million budget. Needless to say, it's not doing all too great, and I doubt it's going to pick up given that Secret Life of Pets is out and Finding Dory is still in theaters. Which is a shame because out of all the mainstream movies that came out on July 4th weekend, it's the best one by a good margin. Now, 75% of this movie is entirely CGI, except for the girl who plays Sophie, Ruby Barnhill. And the messing of the CGI and what is physically there, for the most part it works. However, when the camera is not actively moving, or when Ruby Barnhill is standing further off from the camera, I did find the seams to be somewhat noticeable. Needless to say, the CGI is no Jungle Book. However, what this film has over Jungle Book, and what Jungle Book does not have at all, is a terrific central performance by a child actor. Unlike Jungle Book that has relatively breathtaking visuals but has a performance by a child actor that almost completely shatters the entire illusion, BFG is able to maintain its illusion through Barnhill. Because she very much believes in this world, I found it very easy to as well. She sells it, and so does Steven Spielberg with his direction of actors, something Steven Spielberg has always excelled at doing. And of course, there's the almost always moving camera work by Spielberg's longtime cinematographer, Janusz Kaminski. Another component that adds to the wondrous nature of the BFG is John Williams, whose score pretty much plays all throughout the entire film. There's rarely a scene where there's no music. And although I cannot recall a specific piece, nor do I see myself going out of my way to listen to the score ever, it's a good score. It was sort of like Harry Potter light. One thing that I have not yet talked about is the BFG himself, who is played by Mark Rylance, who is in last year's Bridge of Spies. Just like Ruby Barnhill, Mark Rylance is great, and I have to say that I did enjoy the interactions, watching them argue over their dialects, because the giant has a very odd dialect. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. And I have to say that I did find some of it to be relatively heartwarming. And despite the physics for the BFG being off, meaning that when he runs, the ground does not shake, nor does anybody actually hear him when he's like running around in London, whatever, it's just a small nitpick. What I will say though is that the CGI for the BFG, I have to say, I was relatively impressed with. What I will say that I was unimpressed with are the other giants. They don't look as great. Another thing that I want to bring up is the third act. Now, some people haven't been the biggest fan of it. However, for me, I actually found the third act to be the most engrossing. Not to give it away in case anybody out there is spoiler sensitive, but the third act had a very interesting dichotomy, and I also thought that it lent itself to some nice bits of creativity. I must also mention that there was a fart joke in this movie, and when I saw the movie going in that direction, I was quite nervous. But I have to say that the movie didn't drop the ball. It's actually funny, and for a fart joke, I dare say it was somewhat classy. Despite all of the good things that I've said about the BFG, I do have some problems. The movie is 2 hours too long in my opinion. The interactions between Sophie and the giant, I do think some of them could have been hurried along just a tad, and the third act, as much as I like it, it could have been shorter as well. And what I find surprising is that the climax itself is actually really short. Even the calm before the climax is longer than the climax itself. Then there's this one scene in the movie where John Williams' music just simply fails to match the nature of the tone of a scene that is rather suspenseful. It's all uppity and whimsical, and it's just like, wow, this is just like going in 2 different directions here. And it's that really coincides with my next complaint, and it's a very personal one, and that is, this is less of a Spielberg family film and more of a children's film, a young children's film. Although there are indeed some comparisons that can be drawn, this isn't like E.T. where the film is afraid to cuss or is afraid of scaring the hell out of kids during certain scenes. The BFG plays it safe, too safe to where when the characters are in peril, you feel nothing. Not only that, but a lot of the humor, a lot of the imagery is more suitable for kids. That said, at least this movie isn't trying so desperately hard to be hip with crappy contemporary pop music or voice performances by a bunch of A-list celebrities. This movie may be for young children, but at least it respects them. So with all that said, I'm going to give the BFG a very strong 3.5 out of 5. For young children, this might be a 4 to a 5, and if you're somebody who has young children, then I would recommend taking them to go see this movie, or you can go take them to go see Finding Dory or Secret Life of Pets, like every other parent out there. This movie came out at a very terrible time. Anyway, if you're somebody who has seen the BFG, do let me know your thoughts on it. And as always, I'm Colin Kirkland, and thank you so much for watching.